Okay, so lately on social media, I've been taking issue around posts that offer comparisons, such as, there are people who are struggling with things that are worse than what you're going through, and they're still more successful than you. Here's why I'm taking issue with this. My assumption is going to be that the authors of these posts are not trying to shame people. They're trying to use those types of posts as a way to galvanize, as a way to encourage people. Hey, if you're struggling, all you need to do is look at somebody else who's doing better, and that'll motivate you. But for the reasons that I mentioned in the text, a lot of times those types of comparisons are not only not helpful, but they can create the opposite effect. They can be damaging to an individual's efforts, maybe your efforts to try to initiate and perpetuate a behavior change in an area of their life that's really important. So the question becomes, what works instead? And I think the answer to that can be found through the work of a legendary Dr. Albert Bandura and the work he did back in the 1960s around modeling. And what Dr. Albert Bandura asserted is that behavior change is not just initiated by taking direct action, but sometimes a preliminary step before that is observing the behaviors of other people and modeling those behaviors as a motivator and a director for your own behavior change. So here's how it works. Who do you know that is struggling with something similar to what you struggled with, or maybe even they struggled with something much greater in the past? One example is on our show, The Self-Help Antidote, we interviewed Charlie Plum. Charlie Plum was a POW who spent years at the Hanoi Hilton. Now, a prisoner of war arguably has gone through circumstances and situations that's far worse than what most people will experience in their lifetime, I hope. But yet, he not only survived the prison camp, but thrived after it. So let's say you wanted to model yourself on Charlie Plum, but you're not basically a prisoner of war, yet you still struggle through things that are traumatic. They've caused emotional and psychological duress. One of the things that you can ask yourself is, what are the attributes that Charlie Plum exhibited that you have in common, where you can identify with Charlie Plum on a certain level? And then what are the exact things that Charlie Plum did? What were the mindsets and the behaviors that he executed on? Write them all down. And then identify which one of these behaviors as a starting point do you feel confident, like on a scale from 1 to 10, it's like a level 8, that you could initiate, even in one small degree tomorrow? Or what are the things that he didn't do that you're doing that's causing you further duress? What's one of the things that you could stop doing? Although it's easier when you're initiating a behavior to identify what you will do versus what you won't do or stop doing. So as a starting point, that might be helpful. So according to Dr. Albert Bandura, there are 4 processes around modeling that are particularly important. And step number 1 is attention. That means sensory acuity. Every time you go see a film, every time you go out, every time you meet somebody, and there's a character, there's an individual, either in your real life or vicariously, someone you don't know but you know of, pay attention to how they live their life, and what do you find inspiring that makes you notice a level of grit or resilience or perseverance in that individual. Number 2, the second step becomes retention. So once you pay attention and you notice it, you have to retain what it is about this person that you could possibly model. So as soon as possible, after you get back from a film, write down what was it within the storyline that inspired you? Who was the character? What were they struggling with? What were the behaviors that you observed in that character? And what was the rewards that they got as a result of exhibiting those behaviors? Step number 3 is motor replication. In what small way, as soon as possible, that could be by the end of the day, it could be the very next day, can you start to emulate some of those behaviors with this person you know or the character you observed? And the final step is motivation. Outside of the rewards, what is it about those rewards, or what is it about being the type of person that exhibits those behaviors, attitudes, actions that resonates with you most? In what way does that support not only who you want to be, but what you value most. So number one, pay attention. Number two, write down as much specificity around this person as you can so you can have retention around what are the key attributes, attitudes, behaviors that this individual possesses. Three, replication. What's your simple process for even emulating one of these behaviors? And motivation. Why is this critical? That works a lot better than having somebody compare you to who they think you should be, or what you should be doing, or what you have the right or don't have the right to feel and think.